All right. Ready to jump into something a little different?
Always up for a challenge. What do we have?
Well, today, let's deep dive into the world of, get this, Sewerage Systems Managers.
Sewerage Systems Manager. That doesn't sound very glamorous.
I know, right? But stick with me. It's way more interesting than it sounds. We're going to use some info from RoleCatcher, that cool job search platform, to kind of unpack everything.
All right, I'm intrigued. Let's hear it.
So imagine this. You're responsible for making sure, well, everything goes down the drain properly. Literally. We're talking about the whole sewage system for a city.
Okay, now that you mention it, we do kind of take those systems for granted.
Totally. And that's what makes this deep dive so interesting.
So what does RoleCatcher say about what these managers actually do?
They're calling it life cycle management of wastewater. Everything from when it leaves your house to when it can safely go back into the environment. Sounds pretty important when you put it that way.
It is. I mean, we're talking civil engineering, environmental science, even public health, all rolled into one.
Whoa, I hadn't even thought of it like that. It's way more complex than just like fixing pipes.
Right. It's a whole system, and it has to work perfectly all the time.
Okay, so paint me a picture. What does a typical day look like for a sewage systems manager?
Well, one day you might be in the office, hunched over blueprints, making sure a new sewer line meets all the regulations. The next, you could be out on a construction site, hard hat and all, overseeing the actual installation.
No way. So it's a mix of office work and being out in the field.
Absolutely. You might even find yourself at, a wastewater treatment plant, troubleshooting some kind of technical issue.
Okay, that was not what I was expecting. This is definitely not your average desk job.
You got that right.
And speaking of not your average job, RoleCatcher mentions some potential hazards. I mean, it's not all sunshine and roses, is it?
It's definitely not always pretty. We're talking construction sites, treatment plants.
Yeah, I was going to say, some of those places probably don't smell too great.
You can say that again. But what I found interesting is that they highlighted how important typical interactions are in this job.
Oh, right. Because you're not just down there in the sewers by yourself all day.
Exactly. You're dealing with government agencies, contractors, engineers, even the public sometimes. Communication is key.
Wow, so you need serious people skills on top of all the technical stuff.
Definitely. You're basically the go-to person for anything and everything sewage related.
That's a lot of responsibility.
It is, but it's also what makes this job so important. And you know what else I found really interesting? The tech involved.
The tech? Wait, what kind of tech are we talking about here?
RoleCatcher mentioned sensors and analytics. Apparently it's changing the whole game.
Sensors in the sewers, what do they do? Like sniff out problems?
Kind of. Think about it. A leak in an older system might go unnoticed for weeks, right? Huge waste of water. Potential environmental hazard. But with sensors, you get an alert the second something's off.
So you can fix it before it becomes a major issue. That's actually really cool.
Right. And because you get real-time data, you can pinpoint the exact location of the problem, making repairs way more efficient.
Wow, I had no idea technology played such a big role in sewage management.
Oh yeah, it's completely changing the game. And it's not just about efficiency either. It's also pushing the whole industry towards being way more sustainable.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, think about all the energy used in wastewater treatment. These days, sewerage systems managers are using things like, get this, biogas from the wastewater itself to power their plants.
Whoa, so they're turning waste into energy. That's incredible.
Yep, and they're looking for ways to reclaim and reuse water too. It's pretty amazing to see how this field is evolving.
It's incredible how much technology is transforming even the less glamorous aspects of our world. But let's talk about what it actually takes to be a sewage systems manager. I mean, what's the career path really like?
Yeah, RoleCatcher actually had a whole section on the pros and cons.
Oh, right. Everyone wants to know about the perks, but what about the not so pleasant parts of the job?
Well, they keep it real. But honestly, when you think about it, you're dealing with something essential here. People need these systems to work, which means pretty solid job security, right?
True. And let's not forget, this job is crucial for public health.
Exactly. Ensuring everything is treated properly, it's like a direct line to keeping people safe and the environment clean. Talk about making a difference, right?
No argument there, but I gotta ask. RoleCatcher does mention some challenges. What about those times when things go wrong? Like, emergencies or just dealing with the
not so pleasant stuff.
Yeah, exactly. It can't all be high-tech sensors and sustainable solutions, right?
It's true. You definitely need a sense of humor in this field, that's for sure. But those challenges, that's where things get interesting.
How so?
While you're constantly thinking on your feet, problem solving, coming up with creative solutions to some pretty unique situations.
So it's not for the faint of heart. But what about the skills and education needed? Do you actually need, like, a sewer science degree or something?
I wish. No, but RoleCatcher had this whole list of relevant degrees, and I was surprised. We're talking civil engineering, environmental science, even urban planning.
Wow, okay, I'm seeing a pattern here. This job really brings together a bunch of different fields.
Right, you're dealing with complex systems, regulations, public health. It's a lot to juggle.
Definitely not just about fixing pipes, huh?
Not even close.
Yeah.
And they mentioned these core abilities, things like critical thinking, problem solving, systems analysis. Those are valuable skills no matter what field you're in, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So even if someone's listening and thinking, okay, maybe sewage isn't for me, the skills they'd learn along the way could apply to a ton of other careers.
Totally. But for those who are intrigued, RoleCatcher mapped out some typical career stages. You might start as a technician getting your hands dirty, literally.
And then work your way up to a management role.
Exactly. More responsibility, maybe a nicer office, who knows?
And probably a bigger paycheck, right?
I would assume so. And one thing that stood out to me was their emphasis on continuous learning. They call it staying updated.
Because this isn't a field where you can just learn everything once and coast for 30 years.
Right. Technology is always evolving. New regulations pop up. You got to stay sharp.
Attend those sewage conferences, read the latest sewer journals.
Something like that. But you get the idea. So RoleCatcher also had this whole section on interview prep with some really interesting questions.
Oh, I love those. Give me an example.
Okay, how about this? How do you manage risks associated with sewerage systems, such as flooding or, environmental damage?
Now that's a good one, because those are some high-stakes situations. What kind of answer would impress you?
Honestly, I'd want to see someone who can think on their feet. Someone who understands the technical stuff like backup systems, but can also stay calm under pressure.
Right, because when a sewer main bursts, you can't exactly hit the undo button.
Exactly. You need a clear head and a plan. Oh, and another interesting question was about managing budgets. Because these systems, they don't pay for themselves.
I bet. What are some of the challenges there?
Well, think about it. You're juggling essential infrastructure, public safety, environmental concerns, and of course, you're always going to want more money than they give you.
Sounds like a delicate balancing act.
It definitely is. But one more question really stood out to me. How do you ensure that sewage systems operate, efficiently and effectively?
What were they getting at with that one, do you think?
It's about seeing the big picture, I think. Not just fixing what's broken, but looking for ways to improve the whole system. Maybe using data to predict problems before they happen, finding those innovative solutions.
So a deep understanding of the technical stuff is important, but it's not enough. You need that strategic mindset, too.
Absolutely. You're not just managing pipes and pumps. You're managing this essential service that impacts, everyone in the community.
Speaking of impact, we've talked about technology and sustainability, but what are some other unexpected aspects of this career that people might not even consider?
You know what's funny? A lot of it involves talking to regular people.
What do you mean?
Well, sewerage systems managers, they often end up doing a lot of public outreach and education, working with community groups, schools, businesses, educating them about water conservation, how to dispose of things properly, that kind of stuff.
Right, because we all flush, so we're all kind of part of the system.
Exactly. And speaking of things that affect everyone, we were talking about climate change earlier.
Oh, right. It's not just about what goes down the drain, but about the world around the drain, too. How does that all play into a sewage systems manager's job?
Well, for starters, think about those crazy storms we've been having. Big storms mean a lot more water, right? Systems get overwhelmed, could lead to flooding, backups. It's a mess.
Yikes, yeah. I can see how that'd be a major problem.
And on the flip side, you've got droughts in some areas. Water's becoming even more precious. So these managers, they got to be thinking about water conservation, maybe even reusing treated water somehow.
Now, that's some next level thinking.
And then there are things like rising sea levels. A lot of these treatment plants were built, years ago, often near coasts. What happens when the water starts creeping up?
Okay, yeah, that's something I definitely hadn't considered. So how do they even begin to tackle these big picture problems?
Well, it's all about being proactive, right? Upgrading infrastructure so it can handle those extreme conditions. Looking at new technologies that use less water or maybe even help clean water in different ways. the whole new ball game.
Wow. You know, when we started this deep dive, I thought it would be all about like pipes and pumps, but it's so much bigger than that.
Right. It's about understanding this really complex system, but also thinking ahead, anticipating problems, and protecting public health, all while dealing with,
Let's just say the raw materials of the job.
exactly. But honestly, after looking at all this, I have to say, I have a lot of respect for the people in this field.
Me too. They're the unsung heroes of, well, keeping things flowing.
Exactly. And making sure our water is safe and our environment is protected.
Absolutely. So, as we wrap things up here, is there any final thought, maybe a question that we can leave our listeners with? Something to chew on?
How about this? We've seen how technology is changing things, how climate change is adding new challenges. What do you think the future of wastewater management looks like? What crazy innovations are right around the corner?
Ooh, good one. It's definitely a career path with a future. And honestly, after today, I'm thinking maybe it's not so crazy to call it a glamorous job after all.
Right. It's challenging, important, and at the end of the day, it makes a real difference.
Absolutely. Well, on that note, a huge thank you to RoleCatcher for the awesome insights. And to our listeners, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.